Hey, my name is Ralph and I'm with Flexfilm, and today we're in the Flexfilm studio with Jeff Welch. Jeff represents Tint. He's out of Forsyth, Georgia, and we're here because he can shave windows really awesome. And I want him to show you guys step by step what he does and how he does it. And after this, I'm gonna let Jeff take it away.
Thanks, Ralph, for that intro, man. Kind of made me feel a little humbled there. Yeah, let's jump right in. I guess the first thing is to study the ingredients of whether or not you can shave your vehicle. Not all vehicles are created equal, neither is all the glass in them. All glass is different. You'll find that most Asian cars have a nice clean glass edge profile that you can shave to. You'll find that a lot of the dual laminated glass, the new safety glass that's on the front doors and on some rear doors of some vehicles, has a nice clean edge that we can shave to. But there again, only most of the time. So the first thing to do is to be able to identify that. But before you're ready to make that step, you've got to have your slip right. You got to be able to have a slip that locks down really nice. You don't want a slip that once you squeegee down the main part of the window, that it's still trying to slide around with you. You want that thing to be stuck. And if you have to squeegee it down and kind of sit there for a minute, or maybe push the film and encourage it to start grabbing, then you can do that. But those are the primary ingredients. Is first of all, can you shave your window? And secondly, to have your slip mixed right. And then the next ingredient is going to be prepping your area and prepping your film for installation and for trimming. Okay, so now we're down to what we need to do to start this whole process of shaving a window. First thing you're going to need is some Sharpies. I suggest keeping a black and a silver. My favorite is honestly the black, but that's because I have a really bright lighted peel board in my shop. I can see through even limo tint double layered with a black Sharpie. So, but you can use silver, and that's what we're going to use today just for demonstration purposes, so you can see what we're doing with them. Next thing you're going to need is obviously a knife to cut with, and you're going to also need a knife to shave with. I do not recommend trying to shave with and cut with one knife. Never do that. Always have a knife that you can dedicate to your shaving, because I'm about to show you a way that's going to destroy this blade to where you're not going to want to cut tint flat on glass with it anymore. So we'll cover that in just a second. The next thing you're going to need is the right blade. Not all blades are created equal. We're going to be using the Olfa yellow stainless, the yellow box stainless blade for this. I've always used these since the middle 90s when I started shaving. And which, by the way, I've shaved every car I've tinted pretty much since then that was shavable. Every now and then we'll do a micro edge install or something along those lines, but I would say 99% of the vehicles I've tinted since the mid-90s were shaved. This is the blade I've always used. I have tried other blades, and I think the reason for these working so well is how they're made. I won't go into those intricate details, but the way the edge is ground on these blades, it makes a difference as far as the longevity and how long you can shave with it after dulling it the way we're fixing to show you how to dull it. So what we'll do is we'll start off with prepping our knife blade. I've got an old blade in here now, and this thing would barely cut paper if I tried to do it, but we're going to go ahead and swap that out. And put a brand new blade in. When you get a new blade in your knife, always either wipe it before you install it into your knife holder or wipe it afterwards. There's a layer of oil on these knife blades that was used in the grinding process and in the packaging process to prevent contamination and so forth. So get the oil off your blade, and the way you prep your blade, please don't cut yourself when you try this, but when you run your finger across this blade very lightly, you can feel that thing's trying to cut into your skin. It's very sharp. It's a razor blade. First thing you want to do is dull it. Bring the whole edge of that blade across that glass, just right across the top of the glass. You're not going to hurt the glass any at all. If it's an Asian car, you might do it 3 or 4 times, but you want this blade edge to be smooth, but you don't want it to grab your skin and try to cut, okay? You want it dull. So you get it good and dulled up. Now, once you get that dull and you've got it smooth, you want to come back and knock the edges back flat. So what that's going to do is that's going to make this knife to where it's not going to want to cut film flat on glass, but it will cut through film very easily. So again, just pull it straight across top of the glass and just kind of like a sharpener, just pull a little bit of roughness back into it. And that's how you prep your blade. Your blade is ready to shave. The way you identify your glass as far as whether or not you can shave it is come on the inside and you can flip the edge of your, I don't know if you can hear that in the video, but kind of flipping the edge of that glass with my fingernail, and you'll be able to find either by way of feeling or by way of looking of whether or not you've got a piece of glass that has a nice smooth edge that can be shaved. So what we do to get prepped up here is lay our film out on the glass. And I always start with the window all the way up. You can mark any roll down window in this manner and it'll give you a very accurate install. It'll give you a very accurate pattern. Now you've got your film in place, you're covered all the way around. I always like to line up the bottom on mine because most of your roll downs are going to have a straight edge on the bottom. And then what you want to do is you want to mark everything on this window. And I always use the tip of the Sharpie. We'll go ahead and draw a picture of what the end of the Sharpie looks like. Let's see if I'm doing this right. Okay, we have the end of a Sharpie marker. We'll use that in just a minute. We're going to make a mark here, right where the end of the weather strip is, where it meets the glass, on the back and the front of the window. And you can kind of finish out those bottoms if you want to, just for reference. And again, we use just the very tip of the Sharpie to make those lines. So now, what you want to do, this window is what I call a single runner window. This is a rear roll down out of I think a Altima, what it looks like, an order model Altima. But the front edge of this window does separate out of the weather strip. So we're going to show you how to get that trimmed up and be able to shave that edge too. So what you do is you roll the window down where you can get to all of your edges of the glass, even this front edge over here. And you want the window down far enough so that you can be, from the inside, you've got room to get a knife blade up into here. And that's about as far down as what somebody would be able to see that edge if it was a passenger. So you want to take your Sharpie and finish these lines out. Now, on that glass edge, we're going to use a different part of the Sharpie. We're going to use this corner right here, this inside corner. And we're going to let this part of the Sharpie right here lay on the film up here and make a wide mark. So in other words, we're going to lay this Sharpie down and cause it to write really wide like that. But we're going to have, again, the edge of the glass will be right here. And we're going to allow the film to be marked right there at that edge of that glass. It makes a very precise mark. So you want to start away from the corners and work yourself into these corners. And come on around the edge of the glass and let your finger come up and kind of push the film over into that corner and bring it as far over as you can without creasing it. Now you've got your outline. You're going to need this in order to shave and have some room around this window. And you've also made marks so that if your window, some cars, the windows tend to shift a lot. And with these marks, if you were to make a secondary mark on a window that shifts, you would see that shift. So I highly suggest using these marks on on any window, especially when you're trying to shave one. So we'll go from here to the peel board, and we'll show you how to trim this up to where it can be shaved. All right, we're over at the peel board, and we've got our film marked. You can tell it's the same piece of film because we still got our fancy little drawing of the Sharpie there. So this part is actually pretty easy. I always start with a new blade, a new snap. I just got done putting this blade in this knife for this video, but just by habit, I just snapped it off. So we'll go ahead and start with a new blade. And what we want to do is we're going to go ahead and just kind of come out here and just make a big trim around this right at the outside edge of our Sharpie mark. And the reason why you see me staying sort of close to that mark is for positioning. Now we're up here on the front edge, and I'm going to come out of this, and I'll explain why I'll do that in a second. Because what we're going to do here is we're going to trim this to where we can still shave this edge after we get our film in the vehicle. But we're also going to make it to where we can do a controlled entry to that shave so that the bottom of the shave where it comes off the edge of the glass is nice and smooth and makes a nice smooth transition, and we can round the bottom corner out too. So, little side tip here, anytime you're cutting film and you need to stop and re-enter a cut, always swing out of that cut like you saw me do there. That way you can come back into that cut very smoothly and continue on. So now we know this is the bottom of our Sharpie mark. We know this is as far down as where your passenger is more than likely going to see the edge of that glass. So you don't have to shave the rest of it. You can kind of cheat your way through there. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to, and because I lifted my blade, I'm going to go ahead and snap it off just to make sure. But we're going to come down through here and then bring your cut over a little and then parallel with that line and round the bottom out. So now what we have on this side is a nice transition that goes back over onto the flat part of the glass and stays away from the edge. But right here, somewhere close to where we can start to see the edge of this window as we're rolling it down, we can get to that easily with the tip of our knife after install to start our shave up that side. All right, we got the front edge of our roll down shaved, and keep in mind the width of your Sharpie mark, because the inside edge of this Sharpie mark, I meant to tell you this, when we put the window right here in this corner of the Sharpie, what that does is that puts a mark, this Sharpie mark right on the edge of the polished surface of the glass. So in other words, everything from here up has got to go either now or when you shave it. So we've got this front edge marked, and we've got it trimmed back down here at the bottom so that the front edge of the film lands inside that Sharpie mark or inside the edge of the glass. So back here on the back, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to make a cut, and keep in mind too how far your glass goes back into that channel. On these type of roll downs, your glass is only going to go about 3/16 of an inch up into this channel. So what we'll do is we'll come in about 1/8 of an inch here and make one nice straight cut. So now we got the back edge cut off where we need it. Now, some guys will install this film just like it is and then come back and shave it, and you can do that. I've done it a bunch of times. You can come in here and just shave this off clean after you get inside the car with it. You can get your blade to go up in there and cut it. I don't recommend doing that because it leaves a very sharp corner on your film, and that corner stands a good chance of catching at some point and peeling. No matter how clean it is or whatever, it just leaves a sharp corner. To me, it's not a good idea. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our film here for a straight edge, more or less. And you see, again, how the bottom of this Sharpie mark is here. You kind of follow that edge around. It's got a contour going around. So you want to find where that contour is. And I usually use a ruler, but I'm grab this piece of film because it was handy. So you find out where that arc or that contour is going to land over here at the side of the film and start a cut right there. And then come up and out. So what we've done is we've now made a cut that lines up exactly with the bottom of this Sharpie mark. And then we can come over here around this corner and also around this bottom corner. And that piece of film is ready for installation. And what we've done is we've left a tab all the way around the areas of the edge of the glass that we can get to shave it. So that's how you prep your film. So you want to mark everything with your Sharpie, with the tip of your Sharpie on the sides, and then on your top edge or the top and front edge, if you have a window that has that, lay your Sharpie down on the corner of the glass and let it mark your film. So that's how you get your film prepped up. All right, we got our film cut and prepped, and we went over how to get that prepped and those details. Now we're back to the glass. We're ready to get this film installed and get it shaved. So the first thing to do is to come back to your knife. I want you to take your knife out that you prepped your blade, and you got a nice dull blade. When you come across the top of this glass, it's nice and smooth. But when you get to the corner, it's a whole different sound. I'm not putting any more pressure on this blade, just the weight of the knife. That's the corner of the glass, and that's where you're going to want your knife blade to be at all times when you're shaving. You don't want to hear this. On blade angle, we've discovered one angle already by this sound. We've got to, even if we try to cut into it. Ah, there we go, there's that corner. All right, so we found our first angle, and that's the angle of rollover. That's the angle that your knife has to be in order to be on that corner. Now you can't cut your tint like this because obviously it would just start ripping it and all that. So what you want to do is you want to come into about a 30-degree angle this way. If you come past that and try to do it like this, your blade is not going to stay on that corner very well. It's going to try to come up into your tint. But if you find a little bit, about a 30-degree angle, and then this back angle, how much your blade is standing up off the glass is important too. But once you combine those three angles and put a little bit of pressure on your blade, you're going to be able to come across there, and a lot of times you're actually going to burn a groove into the blade. You may not be able to see it in the camera. I'm trying to turn it in the light so you can see there's a couple of grooves in that blade right there. And those grooves actually help to hold your blade still while you're shaving. So again, find your angles, and this back angle is going to be a little different depending on how rough this glass is. A lot of your windows are going to be really nice and smooth, but you're going to run across one every now and then that's kind of rough, and you'll have to really put some angle and a lot of pressure on it, and you'll have to move fast too. So this is where the art form comes in. This is where you have to primarily know these three primary angles, and once you do, you combine that with the right speed and the right pressure on your blade, and it gives you a nice clean cut. So again, find your angles, all three: the angle of rollover, the angle of attack, and the angle of the relief of your blade, and you'll be able to shave successfully. I'm not sure if you can see that or not, but again, those three angles are angle of rollover, and then your angle of cut, and your angle of relief. You always want to hear how that blade's catching and jumping. Those are little imperfections along this edge. This is a good clean edge. This is a Nissan. I think this is actually the original Nissan glass in this car. It is. So typically your original equipment glass is better as far as those edges go. And some of your aftermarket glass, watch out for them. Obviously we're working on a door of a Nissan car today, and it's got the Nissan stamp here in the corner. If you see another stamp, just like the window behind it is not the original Nissan window, this one was replaced at some point in this vehicle's life, and it says Armor Plate on it. So it's an Armor Plate brand glass. I'll get it out in a second. But aftermarket roll-down windows in some of these off brands can have some really rough edges on them, and they'll trick you. You'll feel of them when you'll be like, oh man, I can shave that good, and then you get your tint on here and it's like, and you can't get it to shave. Those are the ones that you almost want to just come back and micro etch and just let it be and tell your customer, hey, it's got aftermarket glass. we'd be better off not to shave it. So anyway, we're ready to get this thing shaved. We know how to recognize the edge of the glass and what it needs to sound like. Just like that. And don't worry about messing your blade up. Obviously, we've already dulled it pretty good. It's not cutting. It'd cut through some wet butter right now, but that's about it. It's pretty dull. So what we want to do is get this window prepped up and get our film on it. A little plug for Tint Hosilla. We're using the automotive nozzles here today. That's my favorite nozzle. In fact, I just got done doing a small commercial install with the same automotive nozzle. We did a couple of doors in a building for a company in our town. So you saw what I did there. I used my rag to come around this edge of the glass and make sure the edge of the glass gets cleaned all the way around. Make sure I hit all the rubber and everything around it. One other side note here, we have this panel loose on this door panel. We have this panel pulled back because I like to bottom load all that I do on roll downs, if it's possible, and it makes any sense. Some vehicles, it just don't make sense to get that out of the way, but if you want a cleaner install and you want a faster install, get these panels off or either get your weather strips out of the way. A lot of vehicles, you want to cover these panels. A lot of vehicles are water sensitive and you can get not really some damage, but you can get some discoloration there from that water. So you want to squeegee and get your window clean. And you can see that I've used the angled squeegee technique. That's how I clean all my windows. And then what I do is I bump it up. You see I started with the window down, that way I can get to everything on the window. And then I'll pull back across it one more time at the bottom and force everything down. And we'll flush this thing out and get a piece of film on it. Now, you remember how we marked this film with a Sharpie and then we cut the film to the outside of those Sharpie marks? One of the reasons why we do that is so that we can align our film, not just to have some film to trim off, but also so we can align our film, because now I want this same distance all the way around this edge, and if I have that, I know that my film is in place. I know it's where it was on the outside when I started marking it. And then back here on this back corner, you remember how we kind of lined up with that radius that's on the glass there and trimmed it off? See, now we can get that right up to the edge and it's lined up perfect. And you start squeegeeing your panel down. And then come back and check your alignment. Now I've got my slip mixed to where it's stuck. This ain't going nowhere. I can put as much pressure on here as I need to push this water out. And my film hasn't changed. Having a little bit of a hard time holding this door still because it's off the car, but that's okay. So now we've got our film in place. And we got this back edge, this back corner lined up. Now you want to bring your window down to where you can get to this front edge. You're going to have to go down in the door panel a little bit with your knife to get to it. But when you start shaving, you're going to want your knife blade. You're going to want to take an approach almost like you're trying to cut that corner off the glass. And what you're going to do is you're going to force the film in between the edge of the knife and the edge of the glass like a pair of scissors. And the reason why we dulled our blade is so that that would happen. Because if you had a sharp blade, the film would ride up the blade and it would have a bunch of little nicks and divots along the way. with it being dull, that forces the film up against the glass and forces it right there to the edge of that polished surface. So you want to start down below where the film comes up on the glass and just start pulling with that angle. When you get to the top of a radius like that, allow your knife just to come up and all the way out. And if you're trimming the front edge of one of these, I think our camera over there will get this shot. Always make sure that your front, where you started your trim, comes down to a final 0 point. You don't want to see a jagged edge right here. If you see a jagged edge right here, you've got a jagged edge down there. And if you've got a jagged edge down there, it stands a good chance of pulling a finger or coming up with a bad place in your film. So make sure you've got a nice point wherever you start your trim at. I like to come back and squeegee some of that water out before I start my next trim to come on around the top. But to get this radius, you can kind of push your knife up and out on that radius and come on around it. And then pull up and out to pull the ends of your film. Now, right there, I hope we can see that in the camera. I've got the film coming to my side of the knife blade. That's very, very important. You don't want the film to be around here like this. And a lot of windows are going to try to do that to you. A lot of windows are going to try to make that film go around there. If it does, all you have to do is tap it and it comes back flat and you can get your blade under it and then finish your trim. If you've prepped your blade right and you've cleaned the edge of your glass right, there's still a lot of water there, but there's no contamination in it because we did a good job cleaning and we did a good job prepping our blade. Now you can come back and get some of this water out. And I like to take my rag and come along behind a pretty hard squeegee. I'm using a red turbo. I like the red turbo. It seems to get just about all the water out. And you can come back behind it with your rag and soak up that water as it comes out from under the film. Now is the time that you check to make sure you don't have any tags hanging off, nothing loose on the edge of your film. And if you do, don't try to trim it like this. Come back and kind of do like that and just knock that little corner of that film off. Again, you're not going to hurt your blade. Over time, your blade will need to be replaced because it will become too dull. It'll get little notches and nooks and crannies in it to where it won't do such a nice job with shaving. But that is literally all there is to it. So the ingredients to this are, first of all, knowing how to prep your blade and also making sure that you have your slip mixed properly. You want your slip to lock down within, a good 5 or 6 good solid squeegee strokes with a hard squeegee. That's the way I like mine, is to mix a slip that locks down within 5 to 6 strokes. Some guys like to have it to where it slips around after they've done squeegeeing the whole thing. I don't like that. And in order to shave successfully, you really need it to lock down. So that covers shaving. So again, make sure your blade is prepped. Make sure you got a really nice dull blade. And again, I recommend the Olfa blade. The other blade, I think I've got some here. This is a NT blade, the BA50SS. They're stainless steel blade. These things work really good for cutting on the surface of glass, but they do not work good for shaving because of the way they're made. Here, I think we're gonna trash this piece of film because we're making a video with it. So I'm gonna draw a little quick outline of 2 different blade types. You have on this side a regular ground blade. This is like the Olfa. And this is like the NT. The Olfa is ground on both sides and then it's lapped into a point just enough to get a nice clean point on it. The NT blade is ground on both sides the same as the Olfa, but they come back and get a nice broad lapped finish in here, which works great for cutting right here on this very tip of that knife. Man, these things cut like wet butter through just about any kind of film you put them on. But they don't work well for shaving, because in shaving we need the strength that is taken away on this blade. We need the strength right here in this solid grind, in this solid angle right here. We need this strength. That strength is broken by way of lapping the front edge of that blade. So that's why we always recommend OLFA for shaving. The NT blades can work, but they're a pain in the butt to make it work well. The OLFA is the one you want to go with for shaving. So you got your blades. Again, make sure you have a knife that's dedicated for shaving. And hopefully we've covered everything, all the details. I'm trying to remember all these details, because I got to remember I've been shaving basically every car I've ever tinted since 1994-ish, 95, somewhere around in there. So I'm trying to make sure I cover those details, because it's kind of like just a daily routine for me. But anyway, hopefully that's covered it all for you. And if you guys have any questions, you can get back with Ralph or get with myself, and we'll make sure and get them answered up for you. Hope y'all have an awesome day. Thanks for listening.